Hello, Watershed family. I hope you have been enjoying these devotions and joining into the story of Jesus, journeying with him to the cross. You just read from Matthew chapter 26, verses 17 through 35. This story begins with the disciples asking Jesus where they can go to prepare the Passover meal to share with Jesus. And Jesus gives them instructions on how to do that. And so evening comes and they are ready to share the meal together. And Jesus begins the meal in a startling way with a startling statement. This is not the kind of statement I would expect to begin a meal with friends. He says, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." That's pretty shocking in beginning a meal shared together with friends. And if I were to give a title to this lesson, I would call it "A Last Meal Shared with Friends?" ? And immediately the disciples are upset and they begin to ask, "Is it me, Lord? Surely is it me?" And how I kind of identify with the disciples in this is I think about when someone posts something on social media that talks about how someone has hurt them and they don't identify who it is, and they are like, "You know what you did," kind of statements. And I almost always think, even if I don't know the person very well, gee, was it me? Did I do that? It's just kind of like a natural reflex that I just begin to question my character. And the disciples do the very same thing. They ask, "Surely, Lord, you don't mean me." Even Judas, the one that we all know, we read about yesterday, how he went to the chief priests and accepted 30 pieces of silver to betray Jesus. We all know this. Judas knows this. Even he has the audacity to look his Lord in the face and ask, "Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi." Now, just before that, Jesus says, "It is the one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me, the one who has shared this meal with me." And Jesus looks at Judas after he asks his question, his audacious question, and says, "You have said so." So the betrayer has been identified. What does Jesus do next? He shares a meal with his disciples. He shares a meal with his betrayer. He breaks the bread of consolation, comfort, and shares it with them. He shares the cup of forgiveness and redemption, and shares it with the disciples, and this includes Judas. He says, "Drink from it, all of you." Judas participates in the Last Supper meal with Jesus. Jesus shares the Last Supper meal with the one he knew was going to betray him. After this, the disciples and Jesus leave. And as they're leaving, Jesus says to them, "This very night, you all will fall away on account of me. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, I will go ahead of you into Galilee." Now, just imagine, these are the disciples, the ones who are supposed to know Jesus the best, who are supposed to be his very best friends. And Jesus says, one of you will betray me, and all of you are going to fall away because of me, because of the cross. You're going to fall away. One of you will betray me. And Peter says, "Not me." He sets himself up as better than all the other apostles and says, "Even if I have to die with you, Lord, I will never leave you." But Jesus tells him, "Even you, Peter, you are going to deny me this very night 3 times. You are going to deny even knowing me." And Peter's like, "No way, not me, Lord." But yeah, later in the story, he does. Judas betrays him. All 12 disciples desert him. And Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Jesus shared a meal of bread that represented his broken body for us on the cross, and wine that represented his blood poured out for us on the cross. He shared that meal with sinners, with disciples who would betray him. So what do we learn from this? In this story, Jesus brings his disciples and us along with them. We have all betrayed Jesus. We have all turned our back on Jesus. We have all disowned Jesus. We have all fallen away from Jesus. We are all sinners in need of his forgiveness. And Jesus, in spite of our fallenness, in spite of us not being a very good friend to him, loves us anyway, died for us anyway, and invites us to share in the Last Supper meal with him, to partake of his body and his blood so that we might have forgiveness of sins and find salvation in him. I want to challenge you all today and think about, have you acknowledged your part in this story? In what areas of your life have you fallen away from Jesus? And where do you need to come back to him?